Hey, I was supposed to jump out of this to kind of scare you, but it turns out that's funnier on paper than it is in practice, so I hope you don't mind too much. Boy, I got a lot of plastic here, and don't worry, I'm gonna be putting it in a recycling bin because I'm not a sociopath or some kind of libertarian. But here's the thing. Most of this plastic will end up in a landfill, or burned, or in the ocean. And that's because most plastic is not recyclable. Oh, but it's got the recycling symbol right on it. This is the recycling symbol created in 1970. And this is a resin identification code created by the plastics industry in 1988 to trick people into thinking plastic was recyclable and therefore may be okay for the environment. Plastic recycling is a lie to sell more plastic. I'm Raleigh Williams, climate science grad student and guy who couldn't find a men's jumpsuit that fit him, but a women's jumpsuit is actually kind of working for me. And I hate to say this, but plastic recycling is an actual scam. Welcome to Climate Town. The beginning of the plastic recycling as a scam story starts with World War II. Do I have your attention now, everybody's dad? Anyway, at the beginning of the most camera-ready war in history, the US government felt that a flexible, lightweight material might really help our boys give the Jerry's the old piss and vinegar. So the government forced early plastics companies to work together, to crank out plastic, and to have little slumber parties where they shared their plastic-making secrets. And the modern plastic industry was born. Also, Brad totally has a crush on you.
Oh my God, no he doesn't.
Yes, he does, he told me.
Shut up.
He told me. Since plastic is made out of oil and natural gas, plastic companies sprang out of existing fossil fuel corporations and their hot cousins, the chemical industry. And the nightmare lobby industry group, the Society of the Plastics Industry, was born. And I'm pretty sure that's the last we'll be hearing of them in this video about how the plastic industry scammed America. Anyway, it was their job to get the American consumer, a group of people who had never really bought plastic, to start buying a shit ton of plastic. Lucky for them, plastic kicks ass. Plastic was lightweight, cheap, it performed better than other substances, and it had the ungodly power of the fossil fuel industry behind it. Basically, plastics blew through America like measles at an anti-vaxxer water park. But when Americans were saving their plastic to reuse it, lobby groups just bought advertisements telling them, throw it out every time, we'll just make more plastic out of our unlimited, consequence-free supply of fossil fuels. And that's when plastics came up against their first big hurdle.
On April 22nd, 1 in every 10 Americans took part in the public outcry on that first Earth Day led to political action.
Well, that actually wasn't going to work for the plastics industry, but they had a compromise they felt would work for everybody. They'd lie. So the plastics industry, fossil fuel corporations, and a number of other companies formed a front group called Keep America Beautiful. They got an Italian guy, dressed him up like a Native American stereotype, and then shot this commercial.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country, and some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it.
I mean, yes, sure, they could have just easily made their products less disposable, but why do that when you can just spend a few $1 million on an advertisement to convince you it's your fault there's more trash everywhere? And it worked! For a while. See, the old depressed Italian maneuver got people to start throwing their trash in trash cans and even started some regional recycling programs. But when a louder call to end single-use items like plastic cropped up in 1987, the plastics industry decided it was time to take another trip to Scamville, where they were pleasantly surprised to find they were already the mayor. Okay, do you remember the Society of the Plastics Industry? Oh my God, they're back? Wow. Well, anyway, they genuinely did want recycling to work. So they looked into it in the 1980s and discovered, to their horror, that plastic can't really be recycled. The same chemical properties that make it moldable and flexible also make it degrade after 1 or 2 uses. I mean, that's not a recycle, that's a re-loop-de-loop. But even worse than any of that, recycling is expensive and labor-intensive, and making new plastic from fossil fuels is almost always cheaper forever. Plastic industry documents clearly concluded that there were no effective market mechanisms for mixed plastic, and that there is serious doubt that it can ever be made viable on an economic basis.
There was never an enthusiastic belief that recycling was ultimately going to work in a significant way.
I think they knew that the infrastructure wasn't there
to really have recycling amount to a whole lot.
But even though they knew recycling had zero chance of stopping plastic from just fucking the world, they knew that if they could get people to believe recycling worked, they might have a chance of stopping an actual plastic ban. You know what? I'm being too cynical. Do we have like a relevant clip I could roll right here?
If the public thinks the recycling is working, then they're not going to be as concerned about the environment.
Well, that's not good. But the old Society of the Plastics Industry had a plan. While most plastic could never be recycled, technically, some plastic could be recycled. So in 1988, they created a front group called the Council for Solid Waste Solutions, and they quietly lobbied nearly 40 states to pass legislation that required a symbol they created be printed on every single piece of plastic produced in America. Enter the Resin Identification Code. Officially, just a way to say what type of plastic the item is made out of. Now, to be clear, this is not a recycling symbol. See, the recycling symbol was public domain as of 1970, so the plastics industry just kind of borrowed it, stuck a number inside, and now it's a completely different symbol. What do you mean it looks like the recycling symbol? Don't you see the number inside? Of the 7 kinds of RICs, only 1s and 2s are commonly taken, and even they have a slim chance of actually being recycled. But the plastics industry has made sure that every single piece of plastic has a recycle symbol on it, except no they didn't, because that's not a recycle symbol. It's a resin identification code, because it's got a number.
If the public thinks the recycling is working, then they're not going to be as concerned about the environment.
So whenever the environmental movement would build up a head of steam, the plastic industry and fossil fuels would just pour millions of dollars into recycling campaigns until calls for plastic reduction died out. Then they just pull their funding and all the recycling initiatives collapse until it's time to promote recycling again. For all the millions of dollars spent touting the wonders of recycling, only 10% has ever been recycled. Well, damn, Daniel, what are we gonna do? Well, first of all, we gotta stop treating recycle like it's the Beyonce in the Destiny's Child of reduce, reuse, recycle. Beyonce is reduce, reuse, and recycle is the other two. Second, we gotta keep recycling. And I know, I just spent like 8 minutes shitting on recycling, but recyclers are the only people keeping that number at 10% and not 0%. In fact, any percent of a massive amount of plastic is still significant. And finally, we have to stop thinking about this like it's a problem we can solve with a quiet little choice at the grocery store. Legislation got us into this problem, legislation's gotta get us out. We gotta pressure our governments to pass a ban on single-use plastics. How bad is the problem? Oh, great question. The plastic lobby has actually passed legislation preemptively banning plastic bans. That's right, it's a ban, and it's going to murder our planet if we can't get a hold of our legal system. It's gonna take a group of people working together, so please, be one of those people. In the description of this video is a list of all the active plastic legislation and the groups behind it. If you have a second, and let's face it, you probably do have a second if you just watched this video, consider clicking on some of these links and joining these places because they need all the help they can get. Thank you so much for watching Climate Town. I'll see you next time.